উন্নয়নশীল দেশগুলো থেকে তিনি দ্বিতীয় ব্যক্তি যিনি বিশ্বব্যাংকের প্রধান অর্থনীতিবিদের পদ অলঙ্কৃত করলেন। এবং আমাদের গর্বের বিষয় যে বাঙালিদের মধ্যে তিনিই প্রথম বাঙালি যিনি বিশ্বব্যাংকের এরকম উচ্চ পদে আসীন হলেন। অধ্যাপক বসু 4টি বিশ্ববিদ্যালয় থেকে সম্মানসূচক ডক্টরেট ডিগ্রি লাভ করেন। এই প্রতিষ্ঠানগুলো হলো লখনৌ বিশ্ববিদ্যালয়, ইন্ডিয়ান ইনস্টিটিউট অফ টেকনোলজি মুম্বাই, আসাম বিশ্ববিদ্যালয় ও যুক্তরাষ্ট্রের বিখ্যাত ফোর্ডহ্যাম বিশ্ববিদ্যালয়। তার শিক্ষাজীবন শুরু হয় কলকাতার সেন্ট জেভিয়ার্স কলেজিয়েট স্কুল থেকে। স্কুল জীবন শেষ হবার পর তার পিতা চেয়েছিলেন ছেলেকে আইন অথবা পদার্থবিদ্যা পড়াবেন। বাবা আইনজীবী ছিলেন, তো তাই ছেলেও আইন পড়বে অথবা কঠিন কোনো বিষয় পদার্থবিজ্ঞান পড়বে, এরকমই চেয়েছিলেন পিতা। আর বৈপ্লবিক চিন্তাধারী কিশোর কৌশিক মনস্থ করলেন তিনি কোনো কিছুই পড়বেন না। অতঃপর আইন, পদার্থবিদ্যা কিংবা একেবারে কোনো পড়াশোনা না করা এসবের মাঝামাঝি একটা শাস্ত্র খুঁজে পাওয়া গেল, তার নাম অর্থনীতি। দিল্লির সেন্ট স্টিফেন কলেজ থেকে তিনি বিএ ডিগ্রি লাভ করার পর লন্ডন স্কুল অফ ইকোনমিক্স থেকে এমএসসি ও পিএইচডি ডিগ্রি অর্জন করেন 1976 সনে। তার ডক্টরেট গবেষণাপত্রের পরীক্ষক ও নির্দেশক ছিলেন নোবেলজয়ী অর্থনীতিবিদ অমর্ত্য সেন। অধ্যাপক বসুর কাজের ক্ষেত্র হচ্ছে গেম থিওরি, চয়েস থিওরি, উন্নয়ন ও কল্যাণ অর্থনীতি। অমর্ত্য সেন ছাড়াও তার চিন্তাকে প্রভাবিত করেছেন কেনেথ অ্যারো, ডেভিড হিউম, বার্টন রাসেল ও রবীন্দ্রনাথ। এজন্য তিনি বিশ্বাস করেন অর্থনীতিতে নৈতিক গুণাবলীর প্রয়োজন রয়েছে। নৈতিক গুণাবলী অর্থনীতিকে প্রভাবিত করে। নিউ ইয়র্কের কর্নেল বিশ্ববিদ্যালয়ে পড়ানোর আগে তিনি অধ্যাপনা করেছেন বিশ্বখ্যাত হার্ভার্ড, প্রিন্সটন ও এমআইটি প্রভৃতি শিক্ষাঙ্গনে। জন ম্যানার্ড কিনসের জেনারেল থিওরি তাকে উদ্বুদ্ধ করে। কিনসের মতো তিনিও বিশ্বাস করেন আর্থিক স্বার্থ কিংবা ভেস্টেড ইন্টারেস্ট স্বল্পস্থায়ী, কিন্তু দীর্ঘমেয়াদে একটি অর্থনীতি এগিয়ে যায় নতুন নতুন ধারণা ও চিন্তার মধ্য দিয়ে। কৌশিক বসুর একজন প্রিয় মানুষ কবি নজরুল। তার দুঃখ রয়েছে বাবাকে সঙ্গে নিয়ে তিনি যখন কবি নজরুলকে দেখতে গিয়েছিলেন ততদিনে কবি নির্বাক হয়ে গেছেন। বাংলাদেশে মুক্তিযুদ্ধের সূচনাকারী সেই 7ই মার্চের ভাষণ আজও তাকে শিহরিত করে এবং গতকাল তিনি দাঁড়িয়ে সেই 7ই মার্চের ভাষণ শুনেছেন বঙ্গবন্ধু মিউজিয়ামে। কলেজ জীবনে শোনা ওই ভাষণের বেশ কটি লাইন তিনি এখনও অনর্গল বলে দিতে পারেন। তিনি বিশ্বাস করেন ব্যাপক জনমত মানেই অর্থনীতির জন্য কল্যাণকর নয়। অধ্যাপক বসু আন্তর্জাতিক জার্নালে লিখেছেন বিস্তর, সেটি করতে গেলে এখন 6টা থেকে 7টা বেজে যাবে। তার সংখ্যাও আমি এখানে দিতে পারবো না, তবে তার কয়েকটি গ্রন্থ আর্থসামাজিক চিন্তাঙ্গনে বেশ আলোচনা সৃষ্টি করেছে। এগুলো হচ্ছে অ্যান ইকোনমিস্ট ইন দ্য রিয়েল ওয়ার্ল্ড, দ্য আর্ট অফ পলিসি মেকিং ইন ইন্ডিয়া, প্রিলুড টু পলিটিক্যাল ইকোনমি, অ্যান ইকোনমিস্ট মিসেলানি, interdisciplinary approaches to literacy and development, readings in political economy, argument for a better world ইত্যাদি। কৌশিক বসুর জন্ম বাঙালির ভাষা ও সংস্কৃতির এক উজ্জ্বলতম বর্ষে 1952 সনে। জন্মস্থান কলকাতায় পিতৃসূত্রে, তিনি মাতৃসূত্রে এই দেশের মানুষ, তার মা যশোরের মেয়ে। প্রধান অর্থ উপদেষ্টা ও প্রধান অর্থনীতিবিদের পদ তাকে আচ্ছন্ন করেনি কখনো, বরং পদকে প্রভাবিত করেছেন আপন শিক্ষায় ও বিশ্বাসে। বিশ্বব্যাংকের মতো প্রতিষ্ঠানকেও তিনি প্রভাবিত করেছেন আপন চিন্তায়। বিশ্বব্যাংক উন্নয়ন প্রতিবেদনের বিষয়বস্তুতে দিয়েছেন নতুন ধারণার শিরোনাম। উন্নয়নশীল বিশ্বের প্রতি দৃষ্টিভঙ্গিতে দিয়েছেন নতুন মাত্রা। ব্যক্তিজীবনে সদালাপী ও বিনম্র প্রকৃতির মানুষ হলেও অধ্যাপক বসু একটা সম্মোহনী ক্ষমতা আছে, তিনি নেতৃত্বকেও প্রভাবিত করতে পারেন। তার সমালোচকরাও স্বীকার করেন যে অধ্যাপক বসু যেখানে গেছেন সেখানেই রেখে গেছেন খুব সুস্পষ্ট পদচিহ্ন। সুধীবৃন্দ, আসুন আমরা অধ্যাপক কৌশিক বসুকে অভিনন্দিত করি।
খুবই ইচ্ছে করছে গোড়ার গোটা কতক কথা বাংলায় বলে নিই। ইকোনমিক্সে বাংলায় বলার সুযোগ পাই না, অতএব 2-3 মিনিট জাস্ট হালকা কথা বাংলায় বলে নিতে চাই। আমি প্রায় 22-23 বছর পরে ঢাকায় এলাম, কলকাতায় মানুষ হয়েছি, অতএব এই অঞ্চলের সঙ্গে আমার একটা সম্পর্ক তো আছেই। ছোটবেলায় যেসব লেখক লেখিকা যাদের কবিতা পড়ে মানুষ হয়েছি, আপনারাও তাদের পড়েন। রবীন্দ্রনাথ, নজরুল, সুকুমার রায়, ঢাকাতেও লোকেরা পড়ছে, কলকাতাতেও আমরা পড়তাম। যখন লন্ডন স্কুল অফ ইকোনমিক্সে পড়াশোনা করতে গেলাম, আমার অনেক সমসাময়িক ছাত্র ঢাকা থেকে, বাংলাদেশ থেকে সেখানে এসেছিল। এবারও ইনফ্যাক্ট লাস্ট একদিন যে ঢাকায় কাটিয়েছি, অনেকের সঙ্গেই আবার দেখা হলো। খুবই ভালো লাগছে, যেন অনেকদিন পরে বাড়ি ফেরার মতো একটা ফিলিং হচ্ছে। বাংলাদেশের যে অর্থনৈতিক উন্নতি হয়েছে সেটাও খুব চোখে পড়ছে। একটা তো হচ্ছে ট্রাফিক জ্যাম। 22 বছর আগে যখন এসেছি এরকম ট্রাফিক জ্যাম হচ্ছিল না। কালকে রাত্রি 10টার সময় হোটেলে ফিরছি, তখনও গাড়ি আটকে যাচ্ছে ভিড়ের মধ্যে। এর থেকে বোঝা যাচ্ছে বেশ যে দেশের অর্থনৈতিক উন্নতি হয়েছে নিশ্চয়ই, এবং তার থেকেও বোঝা যাচ্ছে যে কত রকম নতুন সমস্যা, ডেভেলপমেন্টের সমস্যা, যেটা উইথ দ্য প্রসেস অফ ডেভেলপমেন্ট একটা দেশকে হ্যান্ডেল করতে হয়। এইটুকুই থাক বাংলায় বলা। অনেক ধন্যবাদ আমাকে ইনভাইট করার জন্য। একটা ছোট্ট কথা বাংলায় আরও বলে দিই। বহুকাল আগে আমার মার এক বান্ধবী আমার স্ত্রীকে একটা বাংলা রান্নার বই দিয়েছিলেন। উনি নিজেই লিখেছেন বাংলা রান্নার বই। সেইটাতে একটা ডিশ ছিল, মাছের একটা ডিশ, সেটা খুব অদ্ভুত। আমরা বইটা এখনও রেখে দিয়েছি। গোড়াতে বলা হচ্ছে আদা পেঁয়াজ বেটে সেটাকে সাইডে রাখতে, তারপরে মাছ কেটে তাদেরকে তেলে ভেজে অনেক রকম কেরামতি সে রান্নায়। কিন্তু ডিশটা খুব অদ্ভুত, কেননা ওই যে গোড়ায় আদা পেঁয়াজ বেটে পাশে রাখা হলো, সেটার আর কোনো উচ্চবাচ্য নেই। সাহেবরা যখন এই রান্নাটি পড়েন, ওরা হয়তো মনে করেন এটা একটা ওরিয়েন্টাল কিছু অদ্ভুত ব্যাপার। আসলে হচ্ছে উনি ভুলে গেছিলেন ওটা কেটে পাশে রাখা ছিল। অতএব এই গোড়ার কথাটা ওই আদা রসুনের মতো পাশে রইল। এবার আমি ইকোনমিক্সের মেইন স্ট্রিমে চলে যাই। I'm really just greatly honored to be here in Dhaka, in Bangladesh, to be giving this lecture. Grateful also to the governor of the Bank of Bangladesh, Atiur Rahman, friend from a long time ago. Also Biru, whom I've known from America. Really very pleased to be with them. You've got a central bank governor who is very widely recognized. The magazine Euromoney was giving him an award as the best Asian finance minister when I was in Lima just about a month ago. The Banker magazine of London has also declared him with the finest Asia Pacific governor of the central bank. So congratulations to you for all these honors and awards. Bangladesh has come a great distance. My plan today is I want to describe a little bit of the progress of the economy of Bangladesh, just a little bit. Biru has just now given you a short description that is very useful for my talk. After that, I want to take you into a little bit of intricate economics, namely the difficulty and challenge of policy making in a globalized world. In the olden days, you could make policy imagining as if your country is closed. But now, for every policy that you undertake, there will be some global reaction that will come back again to your shore and you have to take account of that. There are lots of people who complain about globalization. Is it a good thing? Is it a bad thing? As far as I'm concerned, it's a pointless debate whether globalization is good or bad, because globalization is a bit like gravity. You can like it, you can dislike it, but it's a fact of the world. That's the way the modern world is. No one has individually made the world globalized. It's new technology, ease of transport, information technology, which has made the world globalized. Whether it is good or bad, it is a fact of life. We have to live with it and try to do as well as we can by globalization. There is no doubt that there are some countries that have benefited by globalization. China has benefited by globalization. India has benefited by globalization. Bangladesh has benefited by globalization. But there are also countries that have suffered by globalization. But the fact of the matter is, it's a part of life that we have to handle. So I want to come into some policy-making matters in the globalization world, but let me begin by telling you a little bit about the progress of Bangladesh. And for that, I decided I will take 2 years of comparison, 1992 and now 2015. I deliberately choose these 2 years because in 1992 I had come to Bangladesh and I'm back here again. So take 1992 to now. So we are talking in terms of nearly 25 years. And here are a few numbers which you should keep in your head for the lecture. Bangladesh's per capita income in 1992 was roughly $330. Now it is $750. I'm rounding up the figures. So 330 to 750. So a little bit more than double. If you take the per capita income corrected for purchasing power parity, because we know that goods are cheaper in developing countries compared to United States where the dollar is, per capita income in 1992 was $1,350 roughly. It is now roughly $3,000. So a bit more than double is the achievement. Go back to 1992, foreign direct investment into Bangladesh as percentage of GDP was 0.01%, which is basically zero. Foreign direct investment was not coming in. Now it is close to 1% of GDP is FDI flow. Investment rate, the part of the national income which is being invested. 1992 was 17%, now it is 29%. Your savings rate is actually more than 30%. This number, investment rate and savings rate, is very important for any economist. And I see several of my friends here in the audience who are all economists, and they will tell you by the analysis of Solo's growth model, which is a very famous analysis of growth, as the investment rate increases, a country's growth rate increases. Today, Bangladesh is investing roughly 30% of its national income. This is the kind of figure that used to be associated with East Asian economies growing very rapidly. I think you should try to push it up a bit more, get it to 34%, 35%, but getting an investment rate of 30% is a signal of long-run growth. I can tell you about India. India's investment rate used to be, again, 12%, 13% in the 1960s. By the late 1970s, it rose to 23%, 1978, 79, 80. It was in 2003 that India's investment rate rose to 30%, crossed 30%. And after that, the economy has been growing extremely well. So Bangladesh stands at the cusp of a takeoff in its growth. It's already growing very well, but it is at the cusp. In terms of social indicators, Bangladesh has done extraordinarily well. Indeed, the achievement of Bangladesh is something that other developing countries can learn from. Poverty in Bangladesh is declining very rapidly, but if you take some demographic indicators which are easier to measure, you can see the advance of Bangladesh. Life expectancy at birth, when a child is born, live birth, how many years is that child expecting to live? In 1992, a Bangladeshi's life expectancy was 61 years. Now it is 71 years. India's life expectancy is 68 years. So in Bangladesh now life expectancy is 3 years more than an Indian at birth, which is a remarkable achievement. Infant mortality in Bangladesh was, in 1992, it was 92 per thousand live births. From 92, it has come down to 31. In 1992, India was better in terms of infant mortality. Bangladesh was 92, India was 84. Now, Bangladesh has come down to 31, India is at 38. So in terms of social indicators, Bangladesh has really made remarkable achievements. It is true that India's per capita income growth has been very rapid during this period. It's about 3 times what it was in 1992. But in terms of some major social indicators, Bangladesh is clearly ahead. There is a lot to be learned indeed from this. Another indicator which Biru had shown you, which is a very tricky indicator, foreign exchange reserves. In terms of dollars, how many dollars do you have as your reserve? To most people, this is just a number. But the management of foreign exchange reserves is an art. In Bangladesh, foreign exchange reserves used to be, if I'm not mistaken, if I make a mistake, I will be corrected just now because the governor is sitting over here. It used to be about, in 2009, it was about $8 billion, am I right? Even less than that? $7 billion, $6 billion, $7 billion. It has now reached, it's about to reach $27 billion. Okay, so you can see any country where you say tomorrow it will be 27 billion, you can see how quickly it is rising. It's right on the cusp of that. And if you go back a bit further back, 10 years, 15 years, it was $2.5 billion. So $2.5 billion comes to $6-7 billion. And then over a relatively short period, say 2009 to now, it is $27 billion. This is a great strength. And this management can be very, very difficult, I can tell you, from one experience of India's, and you've also in Bangladesh had similar experiences. See, foreign exchange is a very volatile thing, especially in a country where the international sector is fairly open. You can bring in money very easily. You can take your money out very easily. And you know, in a modern world, you will have to live with that openness. That does cause some stress and strain, but it also gives you opportunity to do well. In 1991, India and Bangladesh as well hit a huge crisis, which illustrates to me very well the difficulty of managing foreign exchange reserves. What happened in 1991 was there was the first Gulf War, And as a consequence, many Indians who used to work in the Middle East and send their money back to India, foreign exchange as a remittance, they moved away from the Middle East, work stopped, and the remittance went down, the remittance money that was coming into India. And when it comes to sending money to another country, people who send money usually look at one another to see is it safe to give money to another country. So what happened in 1991 is as soon as the workers, Indian workers, started not sending their money to India, even others who were sending their money to India panicked. And they started pulling their money out of India. So India's foreign exchange reserves suddenly collapsed. And there was a time in 1991 where India had enough foreign exchange for 13 days of imports. Just to give you a comparison, Bangladesh now has enough foreign exchange for 7 months of imports. India in 1991 had enough foreign exchange for 13 days of imports, so there was a chance that India would default and it would be very embarrassing. These managements of foreign exchange is a very tricky exercise, and it is really a tribute to your country that you've done very well by this. You know, yesterday I was at the Bangladesh Institute for Development Studies, and someone reminded me, so I must tell you, one of the best stories which explains the fragile nature of banking is actually a Bangla story by Shibram Chakraborty. It's a delightful short story, and I must tell you the essence of Shibram's story, which illustrates for the modern world some of the difficulties of banking. The story goes as follows. This is written in first person. So Shibram Chakraborty one morning gets up and discovers that he needs 500 rupees desperately. What will he do? He doesn't have the money. He suddenly remembers that in school there used to be a very good-natured boy called Govardhan. So he goes to Govardhan and says, Govardhan, I have not seen you for 25 years, but I think about you every day. You're such a good person. After all that conversation, he says, my dear Govardhan, I want 500 rupees from you. Today is Saturday. Give me 500 rupees. On Wednesday, I'll give you the 500 rupees back. So he takes 500 rupees from Govardhan. Like all good, freshly received loan, he immediately uses it up. So when Wednesday comes, he's again in a crisis. He has no money to pay back Govardhan. Then he remembers he had a friend called Harshavardhan in school. So he goes to Harshavardhan and says, Harsha bhai, you are a very good friend of mine. I keep thinking about you for 25 years. I need a small favor from you. 500 rupees, which today is Wednesday, I'll give it back to you on Saturday. I assure you. So he takes 500 rupees, he goes to Govardhan and says, I am a man of my word. Here is 500 rupees, which I had promised you, back to you. This is Wednesday. But then Saturday, he has to give money to Harshavardhan. What will he do? He goes back to Govardhan. And he tells Govardhan that you can see that my repayment record is 100%. So please give me 500 rupees. Today is Saturday, I will give it back to you on Wednesday. So he takes the money and goes and gives it to Harshavardhan. Then Wednesday comes, he's back again with trouble, and you can see what he begins to do. Saturday, take money from Govardhan. Wednesday, take money from Harshavardhan. Give Govardhan's money to Harshavardhan, Harshavardhan's money to Govardhan. And he continues that way. The story has a last line which is quite nice. One day, this man, Shibram Chakraborty, is walking down the street when he sees Harshavardhan coming from one side and Govardhan from another side. He is in panic. He thinks, I'm now finished. But he was a very intelligent person, so he suddenly recovers and he said, Harsho bhai, Gobor bhai, come here. I'm so pleased to see both of you together. This is a great pleasure for me because the last 1 year I've been wasting a lot of time. From now on, I have a very simple suggestion to you. Every Saturday, Govardhan give Harshavardhan 500 rupees. Every Wednesday, Harshavardhan give Govardhan 500 rupees and leave me out of the picture. And he runs away from there. You know, it is just a light, short story, but it's a delightful story because in banking, you do have situation. Actually, in 1991, Peru was doing that, borrowing from one entity, paying back another, again borrowing from this entity, paying back someone else. But you can see from this that financial markets are extremely fragile. Something goes wrong somewhere. If Harshavardhan says, I won't lend you, Govardhan will say, I won't lend you because I won't get my money back. Financial crisis happens. Even the big rich countries have very often been hit by financial crisis. And maybe if I have the time, I'll tell you a little bit about the Eurozone crisis, but that depends on time. So this is an area where the management can be very hard, and you've done very well indeed. The challenge of globalization is with us. And what Bangladesh is going to go into, our forecast in the World Bank, we put out forecasts of countries, Bangladesh's GDP to grow by 6.5%. Next year, 2016, our forecast, the World Bank forecast is Bangladesh will grow by 6.7%. What is remarkable is, next year we are expecting China's growth to be roughly the same as Bangladesh's growth. You know, 5 years ago, 10 years ago, this would have been unthinkable. But the Bangladesh economy growing like the Chinese economy. It is true China has slowed down. It is true Bangladesh has grown faster, but it's growing neck to neck. Don't get this wrong. China is a huge economy. It has done very well. So there is still a great distance to go. I don't want to exaggerate that. But the fact that in growth rate terms, you are now neck to neck, expected next year to be completely neck to neck, is a remarkable achievement. But there is still a great distance to go. There are huge challenges. Even a country that does well, it's worthwhile being humble and sitting back and saying, what are the steps that we will take? In today's globalized world, you will face indeed many challenges as you go in, but you will have to take these challenges realistically and try to do better. I'll take a couple of illustrations of the challenges and opportunities that come from a globalized world. China's huge success has been its manufacturing sector. For 30 years, China was growing at 10% per annum, which is an unparalleled achievement. A lot of it was to do with it had very cheap labor, and it was using that cheap labor to supply goods to the world. As Bangladesh opens up and integrates better with the world, and as wages in China begin to rise, and they are already much higher than in Bangladesh, there is the opportunity in Bangladesh of doing very well and occupying that space. In one sector, you are already beginning to do that. This is the garment industry. Bangladesh is one of the big players in the world, has done extremely well. But you must not think small. For this country, it is possible to really do extremely well through this sector and other sectors by utilizing its labor, which is still cheap. It will not remain cheap endlessly, and you don't want to underpay labor for this. But given that it is cheap, if you can employ the labor, you're actually creating jobs for people. They are doing better by that, and Bangladesh is exporting more. Indeed, your export growth has been one of your greatest, most rapid increases. Bangladesh exports, I should have told you earlier, in 1992 was less than 8% of GDP, and now it is more than 20% of GDP. So this is one sector where you have done very well. But being an open economy also causes challenges. You will get fluctuations of kinds that comes with openness. But my advice, the same advice that I give to India, is if you keep a closed economy, yes, you will not get any fluctuation because the global changes will not affect you, but you'll be poor and you'll have no fluctuation. Whereas if you have an open economy, yes, you will occasionally get fluctuations. When there is a crisis in Europe, when there is a crisis in China, when there is a crisis in India, it will affect you because you're an open economy. But if you can become sufficiently well off, then these are fluctuations that you will be able to handle. You can see some of the challenges of a global economy from an incident which took place. This will be fresh in your memory in 2011, in August 2011. This has to do with the Eurozone and United States, but tells you what a complicated world we live in. It's a very simple, in retrospect, we know what happened, and let me explain this to you a little bit. It's quite interesting economics. In August 2011, Standard & Poor's downgraded US long-term credit. So the credit rating for US long-term credit was lowered by Standard & Poor's from AAA to AA+. I remember that day very well because I was then Chief Economic Advisor to the Indian government, and in the evening my phone started ringing. Repeatedly my cell phone was ringing, and I knew something had happened, but I did not know what had happened. When I called back, it was a journalist who was asking my reaction to the fact that Standard & Poor's had downgraded United States. I said, I can't give you any reaction because I didn't even know they had done it. But the interesting feature is, 15 years ago, 20 years ago, if this had happened in the United States, it would be a non-event for India. Okay, it's something important has happened in the United States, it's not important for us. But in today's world, as soon as that happened, within a few days, something very strange began to happen. Foreign exchange started leaving, some money started leaving India. And very curiously what happened was that money from India, from Europe, from all over the world, money was flowing to United States. At first sight, it's baffling. It's US that has been downgraded, but money was going to US Treasury. Why did that happen? Now we know what had happened, why that happened. See, there was nervousness in the world that there can be some global turbulence with US being downgraded. In the olden days, when that happened, people would put their money in other European governments. Europe is stable, so you put money with Germany, you put your money with France, with other European governments. But by 2011, one very important thing had changed in Europe. These European governments did not have their own central banks anymore because the Eurozone had been created and there was the European Central Bank, the ECB. In this new world, new globalized world, if you lend your money to France, the responsibility to pay you back is with the French government. But unlike in the olden days, when the French government could certainly pay you back, if nothing else by printing money, it could pay you back. Now, with the central bank gone, the French government did not have a central bank to guarantee that they could pay you back. The Italian government had its finance ministry, had everything, but did not have a central bank. So putting money in European governments meant that you're giving money to someone who does not no longer has the autonomous power of creating money to pay you back. United States, though the problem started from the United States, was a safer place to park your money, because you know that in the end, if the United States runs into difficulty, what the US would do is it would print dollars and pay you in dollars. So the insecurity was less. There could be one more insecurity when you put your money in another country, is that the exchange rate could depreciate. So if you keep your money as dollars, and if the dollars lose value, you will lose out. But that fear was also less because of a feature of globalization. China has foreign exchange reserves around $4 trillion. Half of that, roughly half of that, we don't know the exact amount, those days used to be kept in US dollars. So, if the US dollar lost value, the Chinese would lose value because they were holding a lot of dollars. So people expected and rightly calculated that the US dollar would not lose too much value because, first of all, the US would not want the US dollar to lose value. And secondly, because the world's second largest economy, China, would not want the US dollar to lose value because it was holding a lot of US dollars. So people felt that US is safe and money started going in over there. So all I'm pointing out is that with openness, there are some challenges that you will face, but if the challenges are faced because your country is becoming stronger and better off, it's the kind of challenge that Singapore faces, it's the kind of challenge that China faces, it's the kind of challenge that India is increasingly facing. This is a part of life. You have to go with it and try to do as well as possible out of that. For that, there are many important things that you should strive for. And number one is infrastructure. You have to strengthen your infrastructure and work for that. This is an advice that when I'm in India, I give the advice to India, that having better ports, having electricity supply more regularly. I know you have done very well by electricity production over the last 6-7 years, but you have to keep this up so that if you have a more efficient infrastructure, more efficient business ethos, then you will be able to take on some of these challenges of the globalized world. In a globalized world, you will be engaged with entities who are not coming here to do charity. When a multinational comes to another country, we have to be realistic. The multinational is coming in order to make more profit. But the fact that the multinational makes more profit does not mean that you lose out. Life is not a zero-sum game. They can make a profit, you can make a profit by their presence over there. Of course, the contracts have to be written carefully. You have to be very careful how you deal, because these are entities that are coming in their own interest. But that again is life. People, big corporations, big governments, they are working in their own interest. You have to work with them because the world is a globalized world. But keeping in mind, you have to put your intelligentsia to work out the contracts. Bangladesh, fortunately, is an intellectually advanced country, and it has to use that to strike better contracts and do well. How do you craft? I want to very briefly touch on. I'm giving you one example from my part of India, West Bengal. Handling globalization wrong, the sorts of mistakes you can make. As you know, West Bengal, for a 30-year period, had a communist government, the CPIM, and many of these people are friends, they are academics, I know them very well. And actually, in terms of intention, they were right. They wanted their workers to do better, and the state's investment should be of a kind that is inclusive. But you can make one mistake. In today's globalized world, if you try to set standards which are too high, capital will simply leave you and go to another part of India or another part of the world. So when you push for greater demands, the ideal should be you should bargain up to the point where The investor wants to stay on in your region or your country, but gives a lot to the people. If you bargain more than that, they will exit from your region. West Bengal had suffered a period of industry leaving the region and going to other parts of India because the bargaining being done with good intention was being done so aggressively that in the end you drive this away. So there is this balance that you have to strike when you're dealing with these agents. Domestic policies I want to briefly touch on, and then I would like to get some questions and interact with you on that. There are, in terms of domestic policies, lots of challenges that you will face. And these have to be taken on through the design of policy. At times, a mistake that we make is to think that good policies can be wished into place. But a good policy does need a lot of effort. I see this in the United States. The best minds are brought in to design, sit down with the political forces to design policies. And a good design of a policy can deliver a lot. You make a mistake in a design, you can lose out. I'll give you examples. There are countries that try to give benefits to their poorest people, give them food, give them health benefits, educational benefits, and you must do that. I personally believe that any country's first responsibility is to your poorest people. The rich people can look after themselves. You want to get them certain basic benefits, you reach out to them, and actually in terms of certain areas like financial inclusion, Bangladesh has done very well by helping people to, even with small amounts, to open bank accounts and get integrated. You have to reach out to the poor. But how you reach out is important. If you try to give benefits by using a leaky bucket, for instance, if you try to give food to the people by having food being carried over by agents who will then supply the food to the poor, you can get a lot of leakage over there. So it's better very often to give the benefits to the poor as directly as possible to them. So give the benefit to them where possible, give them the cash, let them go and then buy this. Leakage will be much less. What in developing countries, very often a mistake that governments do is they don't realize that people, even government servants who are supposed to do their job, people are intelligent human beings. If you don't design your system well, there will be corruption, there will be leakage, and people will get benefits out of that. Understanding that ordinary people, poor people are intelligent. Even the agents of the government are intelligent. Immediately means that you design your policies better, keeping in mind the fact that people are smart enough, intelligent enough, and if you don't take that into account, trying to give benefits to the people, you will get a lot of leakage. This in economics, professional economics, makes use of what we call game theory. Game theory, which you may have heard of because a lot is written about now, is all about designing policies where it's not good enough to be intelligent yourself, but you must understand that other people are intelligent as well. Ordinary poor people are intelligent as well. So you design policies keeping the intelligence of ordinary people in mind, and just that simple principle of game theory. It's not good enough to be intelligent yourself, but to know that others are intelligent, and then you design a system, you design much better. There is a beautiful little story about this. Some years ago, the magazine Scientific American had asked me to write a short article on the use of game theory in economics. And in a short article, the best I could do was give a very short story to illustrate the nature of game theory. I must tell you this story. It's a lovely little story. There is a man who was a hat seller. Tupi bikri korto. Onek tupi niye, this person is going from one village to another village to sell hats. Halfway through his journey, he feels very sleepy. So he puts down all the hats on the ground and he goes off to sleep. When he wakes up, he finds that all the hats are gone. Monkeys, he looks up and sees that monkeys have come down from the treetop, taken all the hats, and they've gone up. He is a poor person, very worried. What will he do? That is his business. All the hats are gone. Feeling very bad, he takes off his own hat and throws it down on the ground. You probably know monkeys are known to be great imitators. So as soon as the monkeys saw this one hat being thrown, all of them started throwing their hats down. So this person collected all the hats, and he went off. He was very happy. 40 years later, his grandson had become a hat seller. And he was again going from one village to another with lots of hats. When he felt sleepy, he put down all the hats and went off to sleep. When he woke up, all the hats were gone. Where he looked up and saw that monkeys had taken it to the treetop and were sitting with the hats. What will he do? When he suddenly remembered his grandfather's story. So he said, I've solved the problem. He took off his hat and threw it down on the ground. At that point, one monkey came down, picked up this last hat, took it under the arm, came up to him, gave him a slap, and says, you think only you have a grandfather? You know, it's a trivial story, but this is the essence of modern game theoretic economics. You don't underestimate the agents with whom you're dealing and designing. And I can't go into details, but even selling things that the government has to sell, you're giving out a contract for a road to be built. There are designs, like auction designs, which are being done very, very well. It's almost like an engineering skill. Nowadays, the economics profession, in economics, there are many things we don't know, but there are areas where our understanding has become much deeper, and we can use these kinds of design to do much better. I'm saying all this simply because your country is today standing on the threshold of doing very, very well. It is actually not far-fetched at all to say that Bangladesh can be the new Asian tiger and join what we have seen the Far East Asian countries do, which have done tremendously well. By putting their workers to work, you will get a demographic dividend, which is going on now. More and more youngsters are coming in. Give them the skill, educate them, provide them with jobs. And Bangladesh is standing at that stage of its own career where a little bit of ambition, the people standing collectively, inclusively to take the country further forward, can make a huge transformation. And really, if that happens, it's good for you, but it is not just good for you, it is good for the world. Today we live in an interconnected world. As soon as one country does well, the benefits are perceived by other countries in its neighborhood, elsewhere. So all I will say is that economics is a complicated subject, but through this complicated subject, over the last 6-7 years, Bangladesh has been doing extremely well. But you can't sit back, because it is a very difficult world that we inhabit. Things can go wrong, but given the way the country has progressed, it is possible to do much better and possible for Bangladesh to do a real transformative takeoff over the next few years. As someone who grew up in a neighboring country, I wish the country all the best, and I do hope that we will see wonderful times to come for Bangladesh. Thank you very much.